Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode number 95 of Material Issues. I'm Mark Hershberger over here on the East Coast, just outside of Philadelphia in South Jersey. I own Pop Detective Records. That's my claim to fame, so to speak. And joining me as always from the West Coast, my very good friend and president of the International Pop Overthrow Festival, Mr. David Bash. Good evening, David. How the heck are you feeling tonight?
Good afternoon, Mark.
Yes, afternoon for you, evening for me.
I'm feeling pretty well, especially given that I just had a tooth removed, and that's never fun. But,
No.
I have a lot of, as I was talking to you about before the show, I have a lot of dental work that needs to be done. I neglected my teeth over the years. I'm a grinder, and now I'm paying the price. Both literally and figuratively. So,
What did you did you just say that you were on Grinder?
well, I mean that happens to be the case as well, but
You set yourself up for that one. I'm sorry.
and that's great. I own it.
That's all good. Yeah. Well, we take care of the things we have to take care of, and that allows us to come back bigger, better, stronger than ever, right?
Absolutely. Regarding IPO, yeah, things are moving along. I sent out the Liverpool schedule last week, and fortunately, I've gotten it down to where I put enough safeguards in that after the schedule is sent, there usually isn't much need to change anything.
Yeah.
People tell me when they're available, when they're not. We do our best, meaning Rena and me, because we both work on this. We do our best to accommodate whatever we can, and so consequently, things usually work out well. I mean, invariably, bands are going to drop out. We've got a lot of bands coming from outside of the UK this year, and it's expensive now.
Yeah.
And maybe a little bit more expensive than they realize if they haven't looked at flight prices yet.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Especially coming from the U.S. And outside of the UK and surrounding countries, a little cheaper to fly, from Scandinavia and Germany and whatnot than it is farther distance. But
yeah, so there's going to be a bit of that. And but as always, we'll deal with it as it comes, and it should be great.
Did you hear from? I wanted to ask you. It just popped into my head. Right? Did you hear from Henry Priestman of the Yachts?
I actually did speak with him today. He told well, on Facebook, he told me that they're not going to be around during IPO, unfortunately.
Okay, because he dropped me a message and he asked me something about it. And I said, I think you want to talk to David. He's like, oh, that's right.
So yeah. All right. Well,
I didn't know where he was going. Yeah.
It's all good. And now, just as it was last week, your audio and video aren't matching up for me.
Must be something.
Why it's back?
I'm not seeing anything.
No, it's all good now. I guess I don't know what you did, but it's all good.
I think.
So yeah, let's see. Anything else going on? Well, not really. This is the time when things are the busiest, and I've got all kinds of ideas to worry about. What do you got there?
I picked up the 10th anniversary double LP deluxe of the Mavericks In Time album on a beautiful blue swirl. It's a nice gatefold with the band.
Right. Oh, nice.
Blue swirl double LP In Time. That album, I'm a big Mavericks fan if you haven't figured that out, but Back in Your Arms Again, Born to Be Blue. And they always come up with these great songs. There's a song here called Call Me When You Get to Heaven, which it's an 8-minute long song, but it just tears me apart. And when my mom passed away 3 or 4 years ago, I sang a Raoul Malu from the Mavericks song called One More Angel at her funeral. And he's just very good at these songs about, heaven and angels and people that we remember having gone past. So I love, I think he's got one of the best voices period in music. Just tears me up. But yeah,
Lovely.
that's a great album. Highly recommend it. It's brand new. It just came out.
Yeah, I've bought a few things as well. I don't have them in front of me really, but
Yeah, and James Garner was in the Mavericks. Thank you,
yes, it
John.
was. And I did find this recently
Oh,
for
I
a
love
lot
that.
cheaper. I found this recently for a lot cheaper than it was on Record Store Day. So I'm glad that I waited on that one. But
Nice.
yeah, all kinds of stuff and all kinds of stuff coming. Um, but we have our guest coming up very shortly, and I think we should introduce her now.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, this is as we said before, this is a bit out in left field, and if you don't know where that phrase came from, I'll explain it in a little bit. But it is a baseball metaphor in a sense. But anyway, she is a honest to goodness, a down in the wool, a professional escort, and obviously there are certain there's certain stigmata that go along with being an escort, many of which are not true. And one of the reasons we want to bring her on is we want to try to eradicate the myths that constantly plague escorts all around the world. We also wanted to bring her on because she's really bright. I saw her in another on another podcast, and I was very impressed with her. She has advanced degrees. She's a licensed pilot. I believe. I believe she's a licensed. I don't know what you call people who are allowed to use weaponry, gun weaponry, but I believe she can. Um, and yeah, she's just great. She's a great interview, and we're really glad she's here. So, without further ado, would you please give a huge Material Issues welcome to Amy Taylor?
And there she is.
Hey guys,
Amy Taylor, good
Hey,
evening.
Amy, thank you
how
so much
are
for
you guys
being with us.
tonight?
Oh, we're fantastic. And the catchphrase on your website is the world's most exclusive model.
Okay, so my web woman wrote that because I feel like I don't want to say I don't know every other companion out there, so I have no idea if that's actually true.
You're the most exclusive. It says so. It's
Well, I mean,
Yeah, just like every hamburger joint says they're the best in town.
according to us, right? I mean, the most exclusive would be somebody who is not available, right? They seem
yes. Yeah, there's no way to find them or contact them.
the most exclusive. No, I mean, I think it's a tagline that my web lady probably was good for search engine or something. I think it's, in trying to brand as please treat me well, upscale, blah, blah, blah. I want you to treat me carefully because I don't want to end up murdered. It's tough to toe that line and not end up coming across as completely just stuck up, right? That luxury branding of any kind. One doesn't want to be a companion and be like, I'm available to anybody, 500 a day, bring it on. That impossible and exhausting.
Well, you're also not. There's no way you would ever be available to anybody because most people out there can't afford you, even if they'd like to.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Sorry about that.
No, you
because it implies that sort of somebody who's wealthy is superior, and that is simply not true. It's just that obviously you have a limited runway because this is a game of trading on one's relative youth. Although I'm shocked at how much older you can be than I ever thought. There are companions in their 60s that are killing it.
I'm sure there are.
But you for sure are trading on beauty and traits that are ascribed to youth, like cheerfulness and open-heartedness, and traits that are incorrectly ascribed to the young when they needn't be. I mean, You guys are intellectually curious, vibrant, delightfully alive, and none of us are 18, right?
Right.
So, but let's say youthfulness in the sense of those traits. Not really youth, but if you're trading on those things and you therefore have a limited runway, and in the end you would probably like to do other things eventually after, because it is so difficult with stigma and shame and all the roughness that comes along with it, even if you've had it as good as I have, and I know how lucky I've been. then you don't want to charge nothing, because that would be stupid to take all the risk and suffer all the harm.
Right.
And not make any money. That would be really dumb. So yeah, you want to charge whatever you can.
Right. And you have nothing to apologize for. I mean, you know, if people are willing to pay to have you as their companion, then you deserve every dollar you get.
But Amy, if you're out with your friends, let's say, and you're having dinner at a place, and there's just other people that come up and they're talking to your friends because they know them, and their friends introduce you as Amy, and you're talking, and someone says to you, "So what do you do? Do you describe yourself as a model, as a companion, as a?"
Many people in LA, I'm a hyphenator. Like, you know, everybody in LA is like, I'm an actor and a nurse and a this and a that, you know. So that's kind of easy in LA because everybody does lots of things here. I think.
What is your preferred description, though? I mean, what are you comfortable with?
If I'm safe to tell people that I'm a companion, I'll go ahead and tell them. But often that's not safe. That can put me at risk of losing my housing.
Yeah.
It could less and less every year. Governments are getting kinder, and I think that's going to win. But there is risk to me to being honest. So a lot of times I'll just say, I got a rich boyfriend or two. At this point in my career, if you can call it that, typically it's very much a long relationship with one person. The volume goes way down after the first couple of years when people find each other's favorites and they just keep seeing each other. So it gets shockingly near monogamous, not totally, but it gets close to that, and it gets very boring after a while. So you can just
not
say,
the myth.
Well, ish, right? And so, and then that might end. You might break up with somebody and be brokenhearted and want to go date 5 guys again, which is normal. And people do that in the regular world too. It shouldn't be shamed. You do what your heart and mind and body need at the time, as long as you're not hurting somebody else. Right. So I may say, I got a rich boyfriend, because obviously being a flight instructor doesn't pay for it doesn't pay well enough to explain. And lying and saying I'm a billionaire's daughter wouldn't make sense. I'm not. My dad's a professor. So I did, after my MBA, work for an oil company, and we did take it public, and I did get stock options, and I did make a few bucks off of that I bought my first condo. So I can say that some of my relative wealth, I'm not really wealthy, but to the degree that I'm not super poor, I can tell the public that some of it came from that, because that is true. So when people ask, you know, how do I live my life every day? I am a flight instructor. And then day to day, what do? I do yoga and go to the dog park and walk my dog. And it's, again, in LA where I live, in my building in particular, there's lots of people who don't work.
Hello, Gary.
There's a woman she divorced a rich guy and she doesn't work. There's entertainers who might work for a year and then take some time off. So I think being in LA makes it easier to have a sort of mysterious financial and work life.
So you're really kind of on the comfort level. You're really more comfortable by saying, "Well, I'm involved in a lot of things," and which is true, which is absolutely true. You're involved in a lot of things, but it's not something that you just jump out of conversation with right away and say, "Here's what you may know me for," or something, because you're in a public space close to where you live and friends.
It can be a safety issue, and before people know, the dismaying thing is that I guess I must not present too much as a dirty whore, because
that's so dismaying, Amy.
I mean, sometimes I wish I seemed naughtier. That would be more fun, but I got to work on that. But sometimes I hear what the judgmental public says about what they think sex workers, companions, escorts, whatever word you want to use, because they don't know that I am one. And I have to hear them say things like, if you're in like a luxury hotel having drinks with your friends and you see an obvious escort going straight to the elevator, which, you see a lot of that in LA and 5-star hotels, and doesn't bother me, but my friend who's a conservative wife and mom will go, "Oh my God, so disgusting." And it's really hard I've had the guts a few times to say, I am pro decriminalization. I am on the side of sex workers trying to survive. You don't have to like that, but you're not going to call her disgusting to me. I've been able to and I've lost a couple friends over saying things like that, but it was the bravest I could get without outright saying, "Hey, let me show you this website and blow your mind right now, because guess what you don't know about me."
So you say that, while you're on that point, because it's something I wanted to ask you at some point tonight, but while we're right here, you say you're pro decriminalization. Of I'm going to call it for general sex workers, because I don't know how to get more specific. I'm not that familiar. Anybody? Yeah, I'm just not. I just don't know.
Well, second career for you. You could always try it. Just
but a second career, yes. But
I was going to actually ask you about that, Amy. I'm sorry to interrupt, but how many male sex workers are there, and how successful are they?
So yeah, before we talk about decrim and legalization stuff, which is an interesting topic also. So it's very interesting. There are more and more male sex workers every year. So, as you follow the trajectory, we're all old enough to remember. I mean, it was within my lifetime that women couldn't get a credit card or a mortgage without a male cosigner. That's within my lifetime. I'm 46. And that was 40 years ago. So we haven't had women having their own money for very long. And that wasn't from a father or a trust fund, whatever, marriage. And we have this explosion of women making their own money. And some of them are saying, I want attention and affection on demand, the way I want it, the night I want it. I want him to leave because I got to get up at 5 a.m. and make margin calls or whatever I do for a living, right? So this phenomenon of women being able to take some control of their not only physical pleasure, but, their preferences of companionship and on demand is really exploding. There are agencies that represent men all over the country now. This is a very popular thing. And it's even more complicated that there are marriages. I know 3 women in open marriages to men that are older. They love each other. They love their husbands. Nobody's leaving. They got kids. They've got decades together. The physical, for reasons of health, is not what it needs to be and probably isn't going to get any better. And so the marriage is open, and there is a well-known guy who's very affectionate and talented that is available for that in LA, and many people know him, and that's his job.
Please don't out me, Amy. Really.
I was gonna, get on your schedule later, but and is that abuse? No, it's people have the right to have physical affection and companionship when they want. And for fuck's sake, a lot of people are busy, and if they just wait for the stars to align, one person's not in the mood, the next one's sick, the woman's got her period, it's not ideal maybe for her, whatever's going, sometimes it's okay to want what you want when you want it, Instacart knows that.
And I
think that's been reflected in a lot of today's TV shows, especially with women. In a sexual situation, women are making way more first moves than they ever did on television. Women are owning their lives. They're doing what they want when they want it. And, on a lot of these shows, men are okay with that, or at least are adjusting to it.
Look,
I think we're in a good place now, and we're heading to a better one in that regard, to where you won't have to explain any of this. Though I don't mean to. I'm on a bit of a roll here, but I mean, it's a shame that you even have to explain. This should be obvious to everybody. Honestly, I know it's not, and I know why it's not, but it really should be. And I think we're heading to a place where you'll be able to, assuming you're still doing what you're doing, that you won't have to explain anymore. You'll be able to be completely out in the open about it. So hopefully
it's very complicated. My industry can cause pain. I don't like that. You talked about that Holly podcast I was on. She did me the favor of saying that I'm not responsible for the pain caused to wives. I'm not sure I agree with that. I think we're all responsible for the pain we add to any part of the world.
Yes.
And you try to do, factory farmed animals. There's a lack of morality there that a lot of people are trying to make better. And I think that's a good thing. That said, when you buy a filet, you don't know where it came from. You're trying to do the best you can. You don't know what happened in that animal's life, how much misery you're responsible for. I think you do the best you can. The times in which, so I've had 3 wives call me, and it doesn't feel good, right? It doesn't, because that person signed up for a different situation than they found themselves unknowingly in. They got lied to, sometimes for years, and sometimes I was one of many sometimes. obviously that person, their reality is being crushed, and that's not great. Now, the alternative, what would it have been? That person would have ended up divorced a lot earlier. Maybe would that have been better for the kids and for the family? I would argue maybe not. But are lies great? Yeah, for sure not. So, of course, my industry has to reckon with that. And anybody who says that doesn't create some sort of moral dilemma is lying, of course.
Right. Well, if there is anyone to blame, it's much less, much more than your clients than you.
Well, and not
They're the
everybody's,
ones who are,
not everybody's married, you know. It's
you're not a predator. You're not going around to married people and offering your service. They're finding you.
Indeed.
So you didn't cause the problem, and you're not exacerbating the problem.
I like to think I'm not. I never tried to steal anybody, even the times they wanted to be stolen or said they did. That might just be fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
I think, you're in music, and what's music? It's sound waves. It's waves that hit a bunch of little bones in your ear, and those little bones shake around, and they make a bunch of nerves fire, and that fires off some electricity up here, and you feel emotion. You feel something.
Mm-hmm.
From a sound wave, from an instrument that was a string or a percussion or whatever it was, right?
True.
The only reason we do anything we do, and I mean anything, is to feel something, right? It's the only reason you listen to music or eat some food or get a dog or have a conversation or fuck, or we want to feel. And whatever's going on in marriages or people who are single and alone, or women who want to be with a hot gym bro and then let him and kick him out afterwards, politely. People want to feel better.
Yeah.
Or maybe they want to feel worse. Some people like rage. They like to be scared and watch a horror movie, whatever. People want to feel. And I'm never going to be sorry for providing people feelings. I've had clients reach the end of their lives and tell me that I was one of a few very funny memories as they were getting ready to pass. And I don't think that's bad. I just don't.
No, not at all. Well, and that takes me back to my original point I was trying to get to when you talk about pro-decriminalization. There's a lot of countries in this world where it is, sex work is decriminalized. It's regulated, it's controlled, it's, the health aspects, everything you can think of. And of course, here in the US, outside of a county or two in Nevada that I know of, it's completely frowned on. It is illegal, so to speak. What is your view on that? Why do you think the US, as opposed to many other places that you could go in this world where it is wide open and readily available and controlled, so to speak, why are we the way we are? And is it that much better in other places?
Yeah, I mean, there you go. Yes, in a nutshell, all that. I mean, look, America is one of the largest religious countries on earth. Mm-hmm. Most countries that are larger are less religious. So we lean conservative by a lot of countries' definitions. We kind of are right-leaning. I happen not to be. I love many people who are conservative. Ironically, any escort will tell you most of our clients are conservatives.
Well, because they're richer.
Yes, and I sometimes think the verboten nature of it is more exciting to them.
Well, that's true too. Yeah.
I'm not sure, but you're right. For sure, they're rich Republicans. Almost always. At least mine were, and most of the women that I know is the same. So, and also they stay in their marriages, and that creates a need for somebody like me, right, where they can't just go date again, liberal guys who are less shamed about divorce and all that stuff. So anyway, it's complicated. But why? So America has had periods of trying to treat my world differently. In fact, there's a San Jose legislator right now who's doing some great work trying to get a bill passed, and I hope he wins, where you can wipe arrest records of sex workers so that they can more easily get a job and move on when they want to get out of it. Because if you have an arrest record for a sex crime like I do, it turns out it's very hard to get a job. If you do get the job, the person who hired you sees it on your background, and then you're nothing more than a whore. I've had 2 jobs where the boss expected me to fuck because he had this secret about me that he knew. I quit both of them, but then I had no job. So guess what I went back to doing?
Right.
So some of California and New York and some of the coastal liberal states have realized that criminalizing it more viciously not only doesn't get rid of it, but makes it worse, which is always the case.
Yeah.
That said, decriminalization and or legalization do not get rid of stigma. You know, in Australia, in Sydney, where it's perfectly legal, it's still not something you're super happy when your daughter does, right? It's still got stigma. Why? We don't like sluts. I mean, they're fun, but we don't want the women we love to be sluts. My father, I've been outed. My father knows. He told me he has no moral problem with what I do. And my father's European, grew up in Paris and Amsterdam, had a girlfriend who was a sex worker in Amsterdam when he was in college. So he said he has no moral problem with what I do, but he's sad for what it costs me in life. And indeed, it costs me a lot. You don't know when you get into it how much you're going to suffer. It sort of just starts happening, and then things goes like that. But it's also been a fuck ton of fun at other times. So, but I think America is tongue in cheek. I mean, we haven't made adultery criminalized like some places do. Mm-hmm. So it's not the sex, if there is that. It's not even the cheating, right? Because adultery is not against the law.
Right.
Seems to be wanton, the lack of shame. I've been most hated for my refusal to be more demure and more ashamed. And that in America may be a Puritan kind of thing. I'm not a history buff, but that seems to make Americans most angry of how dare you, the audacity, right? We don't like a audacious woman. We don't like that.
Well,
yeah, and you made that
comment. As a whole, some people do.
And you made that comment about people maybe going for your services or the services of sex workers because there's that bad element to it. There's that risky element to it. And I've read stories about sex work and or the concern is that there's sex trafficking involved. So let's say you legalize sex work, so to speak. Wouldn't you, in theory, think that sex trafficking would decline because all of a sudden it's not a bad thing. It's an available thing that anybody with the means can
how is legalizing pot affected that industry? I mean, how has legalizing pot affected that industry? I know this isn't a one-to-one correspondence, but
it's very similar. So the illegal weed trade is still thriving because it's cheaper because they're not above board on their taxes and compliance.
Right.
So there are a lot of sex workers who say that legalization is not what we want because all the regulation would drive up the price and people would still go for the illegal market. So like brothels in Nevada are very expensive, like way more than somebody like me. And they are regulated very heavily. So some men who like to try to push boundaries, like get a lot more time for free, or even unfortunately push safety and physical boundaries. You can't do that at a brothel. There's tons of security. There's cameras everywhere. You can't get away with shit. And so sometimes customers don't like that. So for instance, in some countries, what's called out call, which is the companion goes to you, delivery, like Postmates, that is legal. Whereas in call, you would go to her, either a brothel with multiple women, or apartment or whatever, her hotel room. That is not legal, or vice versa. Other places, you can only go to her location. The theory is that she's safer there, and she cannot come out to you. And in all of those places where whatever mix they've tried to design, the other, which is illicit, still happens. That said, it is far safer where it's not criminalized. The criminal element, when you criminalize it, of course, the underground ends up running it. And then you get organized crime and you get, people shooting each other, and you get a lot of really bad stuff, as you do with any criminalized industry.
Sure.
Right. Yeah.
So for sure, decrim and legalization, they're both better. Which one is better is a matter of well-researched debate all over the internet. One can read about, and most sex workers in America would prefer decriminalization, not legalization.
But
Okay, so that was my question.
Let me touch upon something here, though. I'm sorry, Mark, but
That's all right.
I'm surprised you brought up brothels, because that kind of dovetails with the stereotype of what a sex worker does. You and what you do and what they do at brothels, to me, is almost like oil and water, because you're offering way more than anybody. With a brothel, you go in, you have your sex, maybe you hang out a bit, and then you leave. With you, these people have you around. You're giving them the ultimate girlfriend experience.
Well, so the great thing about being a high-end escort is that I get hate from the ones who are just about sex because they think I'm a snob. And then I get hate from the regular world for not being a wife and totally monogamous and married and respectable. So I get it from both sides because I'm somewhere in the middle, right? Which is super fun. But you're right. I was there. I guess I was what an escort traditionally was a girlfriend that a guy provides for.
Now, when you talk to Holly, though, is this quote correct? Or maybe I heard it wrong, but did you say monogamy is rubbish because we are
monogamous? I don't think you ever said monogamy was rubbish.
Monogamy is rubbish because we're not supposed to.
I mean, I don't remember if I might have said that.
You did not say monogamy was rubbish, because I'm sure you acknowledge that there's a lot of monogamous people out there who are comfortable in that skin, and of course there are a lot who aren't. But
I mean, I had long periods of my life of monogamy, and I loved it. And to your point, sex drives really vary, and they're not always something that we explore compatibility about when we marry. We might marry for values or for friendship or good looks or whatever we marry for. But yeah, sex drives vary. I've seen it. Some people once a day is not enough, and some people once a month is fine. There's a wide variance in how much frequency, and that's a big problem of people who marry and have differing sex drives. That's right. A problem.
Well, of course, when you get married, you're still in that romantic phase, and maybe the sex drives are compatible, and then ultimately, then they start to vary, not only between the two people, but within yourself.
Sure. I mean, you age, you have different. I mean, so my sister's been married for 25 years to her husband, and when those movies, Magic Mike, the stripper movies.
Never seen those.
She went to see them alone 4 times in the theaters, and she was joking about she's like, I absolutely love my husband. I'm not gonna cheat, but my God, do I want to? And jokes aside, she's a human being. It's been 25 years of one penis. I mean, she's human. She is, to my knowledge, not having an affair. I told her if she needs to get this out of her system, we'll go to Vegas, get one of these guys, make sure he leaves. We're not going to wreck her home. But anyway, it was a joke. We did not do any of that. But right. I think it is pretty normal to want to fuck somebody else sometimes. Yeah. And I envy the people who never want to, but I don't know what the numbers are, but I would argue there's a lot of people who would probably like more sexual variety than they get. Who knows how many?
And I wasn't making that. I wasn't making that statement that when we talk monogamy is rubbish. That the way you said it was just that's your opinion, and it devalues it. You went on to talk more about, as you are now, about the reasons why we are maybe not intended to be completely monogamous, and we don't think in those terms, most of us or many of us. And so, but some people stay in a monogamous relationship because of old school values or kids, or my parents were married for 70 years and I'd be too guilty if I didn't, hold the course, so to speak. But
I also think that opportunities play a big role in this. Some men or women don't necessarily have the opportunity to cheat because of what they do or where they are. Other people, if they're in a certain industry, there are opportunities out there all the time. And sometimes those opportunities will throw themselves at that person. So that's a big factor as well. I know plenty of people who, if they had the opportunity, probably would. They're not going to go seek it out, but if it was right there in front of them, and somebody was coming on to them and flattering them in the way people flatter people. Sure. And let me, as a man, I can tell you there's nothing more irresistible than when a woman flatters you.
Oh,
That
really?
is the bit. Believe me, that's what makes a man want another woman more than anything. I mean, there are beautiful women out there all the time, and that's not necessarily going to make us want to cheat. But once somebody starts flattering you and lets you know that they are attracted to you,
Yeah.
then you're all over it.
I think
David,
we all
that-
want to be wanted, right?
Yeah.
It's such a nice feeling to know that somebody wants you.
that's a beautiful shirt you have on, David. I'm just
Yeah. Thank you, Mark. Let's see. I probably about an hour after the show's over. We'll probably take about 6 hours to fly out there.
Yeah.
I love this shirt, but it makes my boobs too prominent. That's not a good thing for a man.
We all like a busty guy.
Oh, is that right? Oh, then
it's funny about physical beauty. I mean, over the years, one guy I knew who was so physically perfect, former athlete, but he wasn't nice, and I ended up stopping. I didn't return his calls after a while because I didn't like him, and he didn't even seem hot after a while because he wasn't nice. And some of the less traditionally perfect looking men I've known, thinking of one who was no great beauty, but he was fucking hilarious and brilliant and a gentleman and fun. And he seemed like, when somebody lights up, like he seemed hotter than he was. And not just to me, to everybody. He had that thing. And I don't know.
No, Amy, look, people who don't have the physical endowments, they need to exercise their personality a lot more. Mm-hmm. So you're going to find more people in that, in the let's say 4 to 6 range who have those qualities than you will in the 8 to 10 range. I mean, they don't need to do anything.
Even in the escort business, some of the ones who are the most successful are not necessarily the most beautiful.
No, I'm totally, and that's what I want to get to right now, because this is where we eradicate the myth. Tell everybody and I know everybody's different. All of your clients are different, but tell everyone, like how about let's say a steady client, somebody you see, more than a few times. Tell us about what a day entails, and why they want you to be around. I don't necessarily need you to self-aggrandize, but try and explain that.
The ones who, and there certainly have been a few that we saw each other once, we had a nice time, and there wasn't that much chemistry, and it was, you have a nice life, and you have it's usually pretty mutual when you're not, and it never goes that badly, but when it's just a date, and if it doesn't go that great, you can kind of feel that you're never going to hang out again, and that's fine. But when it's been good, and you've known each other, I mean, I still talk to somebody I met in the very beginning, 18 years ago, and why does he bother flying me around? He could have there's a million of me everywhere. It's not rare.
Right.
I think we just have chemistry. I think he's really smart. I admire and respect him. He likes smart women. So the braininess and my personality doesn't annoy him as it does some others. Then physical type, I have noticed a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people have a physical type. So like the men who think I'm beautiful, they kind of like that Italian, Mediterranean look. It doesn't mean they've never dated a blonde or not that at all, or Asian or black or whatever else. But physical type seems like it's pretty strong for a lot of people. That said, somebody I had a very long relationship with, his ex before me was a Irish redhead, and then me. So it's definitely not always true. Chemistry comes down to something that's ephemeral. You can feel it, and maybe it's sound or smell, or maybe it's not looks. I think some people just fit really well. They get each other's jokes.
That's exactly it. Yes.
If things end up intimate, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but that part just fits. You ever had bad sex and then you've had sex with somebody that like the fireworks were going off? Who knows? It's just a thing where I've read some articles that say it has to do with their immune system and their MHC complex, and it actually has to do with smell. I mean, what do I know? I think Sometimes it's a numbers game. Sometimes it's timing in your life. I know the last very long client relationship I have, and I deeply miss him, but I wish him well. We're friendly, but I'm not seeing him now. I was in a space where I was open-hearted when I met him. And if I hadn't been, it wouldn't have mattered how great he was. So timing matters.
Right. Timing. Yeah, sure.
It matters, of course, in every aspect of life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. You have to, the opportunities present themselves, or the relationships, but you got to be open to it.
Sure.
I think, Kismet's a funny thing. I've been alive 46 years and I still don't know. If I die first, I'll come back and rattle some chains and let you guys know what this all means. Because it's a lot of nonsense. Why you get along with some person and don't, or you do for a while and then don't, right? I mean,
right, yeah.
If people knew the answers to those things, we wouldn't need him. So
I mean, I've met people, obviously in my business, you tend to often meet men who are going through a period of getting out of a marriage. They're not happy. That's why that happens quite a bit. And either they're divorced yet, or they're trying to get there, or they don't know how to let go. And it's a lot of drama. And it's amazing to see that two people, it's heartbreaking because they were obviously so very in love and now they're not. And nobody changed that much. It just changed. And that happens, right? Sometimes things don't last forever.
Sure.
In fact,
I mean, and I'm sure you know this, my belief is that the people who take you on, avail themselves of your service, they want you for way more than sex because of who you are. The reason I brought you on this podcast was because I was very impressed with you.
Oh, God. I mean,
I've seen, you, as you said on the podcast in LA, I'm just a 6, which you're not. You're more than that. But I know what you're getting at. I mean,
people everywhere.
There are beautiful women who I wouldn't want to spend one moment with. But I could see you and I, for example, being friends because I think we would be on a similar wavelength. I can imagine that the men who do spend a lot of time with you feel the same way.
Yeah, I'm still friends with several people that I don't see this way anymore for lots of reasons. It depends why. There's reasons. I hope I can call them friends. I don't pester them if they don't want me to, but they can call me a friend. I mean, people meet however they meet. And if you meet somebody whose soul speaks to you, why would you fucking throw that away? That's stupid. And it's the most valuable thing on earth, right? Is somebody that gets you and you get them. Why would you not take that to its conclusion if possible, if they let you?
Do you think there'll ever be a time where you're going to meet someone and say, okay, that's it, I'm marrying him, and I'm not going to do this anymore?
I mean, I obviously thought that would be before now. The last time I tried went really badly, and I haven't tried since. And
but Amy, could you?
Sure.
Could you?
I have a heart, and most of my retired girlfriends, most of them are wives. Some are mothers, some are not wives. All of them have love in whatever way. I mean, yeah, people who quit this business don't just sit alone forever.
How hard would it be though? I mean, honestly, would you really have to think about, the road you've traveled and all the fucking great times that you said before, crazy times, probably some incredible stories, and the other side of the coin, am I ready for this at this point?
I mean, life has its chapters. You don't live the same way as a 50-year-old woman as you did as a 28-year-old. Yeah. And that has nothing to do with whether or not you were an escort. Like, life has its chapters anyway. Retired rock stars who hang it up, they go live in Palm Springs and chill out. And doesn't mean you can't still play music. I mean,
they never hang it up, those darn rock stars. Look at the Stones. It's been going on too long.
I mean,
if people still want to pay to see them.
It's true. But, the other thing I was saying, Amy, is, and we alluded to this earlier, some of the men that are avail of your services are older and have the means to do so. And I kind of look at myself and say, okay, I'm older, I'm divorced, I haven't been in this ball game in a long time. If I had the means, one way to at least get back into going out with somebody who I find attractive, but I have no clue how to even handle this anymore. This would be a great way to jump back into it, bring somebody that I know is going to meet me when I make a date and not stand me up, and have great conversation, have a great dinner, and get back. I mean, do you see that with maybe some of the clients in that they haven't been in this ball game for 25 years, and all of a sudden they're divorced or they're widowed. They've got a lot of money, but they have no clue what to do.
Yeah.
And where are you going to meet somebody? You know,
the practice run, it happens a lot actually. And the great thing for some guys is, like I said, I'm a 6 for an escort in LA. They start as pretty as me. You should see some of the escorts in LA. They're fucking stunning, and good for them. And sometimes that takes the fear out of like dating a beautiful woman, because once you've gone out with her 2 or 3 times and you just realize it's just a person.
Right.
Yeah, she has a great package, but like it's just a human being. That can help alleviate fear. Like I know some men who are younger have done this like as a trial run and been like, okay, it's a Playboy model, but she's just a human.
Yeah.
And you only find that out after you've spent a couple hours like having drinks and realizing it's a human being, right? I've met disabled people who they don't have the same access to dating, and they never will. Right. I mean, Holland gives vouchers to disabled people to go and have relations with sex workers there, because they understand that those people have, if they still have a sex drive, but they have such limited access.
And doesn't everybody have needs? I mean, and not to get down to it, but if you are in that position, if you are disabled, or let's say you've had a stroke, I've seen, you know, it's not your fault many times that you aren't physically attracted to anybody. Nobody is coming up to you saying, you know, and what are you going to do? You would still love to have somebody's arms around you. You would still love to have somebody say, you know, it's great. It's just great hanging out with you. And whatever it leads to, whether you have a voucher to do it or not, it makes you feel good. You know,
I mean, they have those professional cuddlers now.
I was going to bring that up. Yeah. Is that still a thing? I was wondering if it was going to last.
Yeah, I hope. I mean, I've never been to one, but it sounds great. I mean, when you go get a massage, it's very healing, and it's not sexual, but it's touch, and we all need that. And I have been hired many times, and there's been absolutely nothing sexual happen. That's not what somebody wanted. I know that people like me are professional daters. I know I'm a great fucking date. I like people. Amazingly, in my years of being stigmatized by the world, my affection for humans has not yet been beaten out of me. And so why? I don't know. Maybe I'm stupid, but when you like people, that makes you a great fucking date, and people like to be around that. Like, you ever meet somebody who had so much charisma, you probably would have paid just to have a steak with them, because that's stories. There's people.
It depends on it would depend on what kind of a listener they were, because if all they want to do is talk about themselves, I want no part of it.
You're right. That's no fun if they have no interest in you. And you're right. People also want attention, particularly in this lonely internet world where people.
Yes.
I know my business. I don't know so much, but these younger girls are now offering like virtual attention packages of texting and video, and and their customer base can be worldwide, therefore, because they don't have anywhere near their customer base. It's actually very entrepreneurial. I'm impressed by it. And apparently it sells because some guy in, Shanghai can hang out with them. And
one of the few silver linings of COVID was that we learned that we can communicate very effectively via Zoom or any other platform.
Yeah.
So many things that we didn't do prior to that, without having a personal interaction, we're now able to do that way.
Yes, so, you're right.
I imagine during COVID, this flourished. The thing.
Yeah, I mean, I did podcasts because I was lonely too, and obviously it's not the same. I mean, the full enchilada of getting to hug a human, and if you feel romantically getting to have sex, and there's nothing like that, at least for me. Zoom is not the same, but you're right. It's a hell of a lot better than nothing.
Yeah.
And I think why we punish, I guess the laws we've designed, you want the affection and the physical. And I understand the disease prevention argument. If people sleep around a lot, you have increased disease risk. Well, then again, okay, let's go like make adultery illegal and go full backwards.
Right.
I'm kidding, I don't want that. But fidelity, of course, used to be about resource control. We know all that. I mean, I think you just the small outlier of people who get involved in my business and completely fuck up their lives because they're addicts and they spend all their money and they catch a disease and they get arrested. And I mean, that's a very small percentage of people who, for whom, much like perhaps alcohol or casinos or anything else addictive, they can't handle it.
Right. Yeah.
I suppose something should be done to save those people from themselves. Why they can't mitigate it and sort of chill out like most people can, I'm not sure.
Because on an unconscious level, they don't want to. The high is incredible. And, as somebody who taught physiological psychology, I know exactly which neurons are responding to those kind of things. And it's harder to kick than almost anything else.
Really?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I had a guy say to me once that the high he got, he liked in call, what I told you, where you go to like her apartment or hotel, which is a thing. He said the high he got walking down the hallway and knowing some new woman was going to open a door.
Oh my God, yeah.
Dude, I would be fucking terrified. Like, that is the opposite of what I want. I want to know you. I want to know who I'm dealing. No. But I guess to some people that's exciting.
Well, you're on the other end of it. I mean, on the man's end, yeah, it's an 100% adventure. He doesn't.
How do you know it's not like a murderer behind the door? No, thank you.
Well, there's a good point, Amy. How do you know that somebody who wants to spend time with you is not going to be the wrong kind of person?
So I run full background checks on anybody before I even agree to meet them. My website has a bunch of stuff that's required. It also sends me some technology data from your computer or your phone or wherever you sent. So I get some info that I then go through, which costs me time and money. And it's not a foolproof method. I once screened a guy up one side and down the other, executive from Microsoft, blah, 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 got all ready to go. And then I found out the person I had screened was just not that person.
Right. Yeah.
Most people won't go to the lengths of impersonating someone known because it's pretty dangerous to do to another human, especially one with power. But this person did, and I got fooled. And halfway there, I got a text where he was like, "Ha ha, I fooled you." And I realized I was so. I put in place as much stuff as I can to be difficult. You know, the outrunning a bear thing. I want to be one of the more difficult ones to meet, particularly at this point in my life where I'm not financially as desperate as I was when I was broke and young.
Right. Yeah.
But I did take risk in the beginning, and that is how I got arrested. Luckily, I mean, I look back at that arrest, it was one of the most traumatic nights of my life. But the thing it taught me was that people can lie, because that guy was a great liar. And I didn't know people could lie that well.
Yeah.
He was a professor's kid from Sacramento who didn't come from the streets. I didn't know people could lie like that. And the fact that I realized the next one could be a liar who was a murderer.
Right.
And so I never trusted, I hate to say this, but I never trusted anybody again, face value. And that has probably kept me alive.
Oh, no doubt. Speaking of being a professor, you have some advanced degrees. What are your degrees in?
So I went to UC Berkeley undergrad and I studied biology. I wanted to, like a lot of little girls, I wanted to be a marine biologist, but my work was in molecular biology. So I worked with something called a mitochondria. It's how your cell turns.
I remember my 10th grade biology. Yeah.
Yeah. The powerhouse of the cell, right? As everybody learned. So I did work on that. And then I went to work for a biotech company in Marin County, north of the Golden Gate Bridge. And we worked on mitochondrial oxidative stress, which is when you metabolize one of the byproducts of your metabolic pathways, where you turn air and sugar and water into energy. The byproduct is an oxygen missing an electron, and it's kind of caustic. It runs around tearing up your cell, and it's one of the reasons that you senesce and age. So we were interested in ways of ameliorating that, what's called a free radical, which causes a lot of damage. So, your blueberries and all that. Sorry. So all the eating your antioxidants. Yeah, that's true. So I worked at this place for a couple of years, and I really struggled. I loved studying biology, but Truthfully, I had a really difficult time with animal sacrifice. I killed a lot of mice and rats for 2 years. And I know it has to be done. It's done in every lab, everywhere in the world all the time. And it's what we do. We got to test stuff, right? But when I would watch them making their nests and taking care of their offspring and living their little lives, and then I would just go in and cull 90% of them every day, and all this wasted life and all this, I just couldn't be the one to do it anymore. There was one night where, this is a downer, some of them screamed, and I applied to grad schools the next day. And I didn't know whether I would get in or not. My boss was very angry when I left because I had said I would be there for several years, and I ended up leaving in less than 2.5. So he wasn't happy. But I then came to Los Angeles and did an MBA. And then I worked for an oil company, and it was in graduate school where I discovered escorting. I had heard of it in undergrad, didn't do it then, but I did already have a rich boyfriend, like a lot of pretty girls. So it was kind of like an escort with one client already. He paid for everything, and he didn't want me working because I was in school. He was a doctor. He had plenty of money. I had negative money, and he didn't want me having like 2 part-time jobs and going to school because I would never see him and I'd be exhausted. So we sat down, and he was like, look, I'll pay for everything. And he moved me out of my sorority house because he couldn't spend the night in my sorority. So he bought me my first apartment down by the bay, because he was getting sick of hotels all the time because men can't stay overnight in a sorority house. So that was kind of how it started, having a guy who was a little bit older with money pay my bills. I suppose my mother didn't work, so I suppose I saw that growing up, that a man provided and a woman nurtured. It's kind of how it most of the time it was. And we just fell into it, and I loved him. We dated until we didn't make it. After I moved to LA, we tried and then broke up, of course, typical story.
Yep.
And then I had heard of escorting, and I decided to do that because I was lonely and broke, and I didn't want to drop out of grad school without the rich boyfriend. I would have had to. And then I just kept doing the escort thing part-time. Like I said, because I got arrested, it kind of got me more stuck in it. I probably would have had an easier time retiring, but every time I got a job, I either got demanded sex from my boss, or I didn't get the job offer because they could see that I was nothing but a whore. So, and then something happens to you when the world decides that you're trash and you're nothing but a whore. You kind of decide, okay, fine, if that's what you're gonna call me anyway, then
self-fulfilling prophecy. Yeah.
Because you can't get away from it. Because I have girlfriends that have been retired for 15 years, and they're married and they got kids and they have a business, and people on Twitter still say, oh, you used to be an escort. They still get that every day. So it's something that people don't ever let you. So I just decided to embrace it. What else could I do, right? It wasn't the original plan, but I don't know how your lives have gone, but sometimes there's the life you plan, and then there's what happens to you.
Well, as John Lennon said,
this is my life.
Life is what happens when you're busy making other plans.
Lennon?
My life never. I would never have imagined my life had gone the way I did. I was a grad student in cognitive psychology. I left my PhD program because I wanted to teach. I had taught a class in experimental psychology as a grad student, and I found that I loved it. So I went to teach. I taught because I only had a master's. I could only teach at a community. Yeah, I know. I could only teach at a community college level. Right. I did that for 7 years, and to make a long story short, the opportunity to do this festival arose, and I took it. Huh. And it's been 24 years now that I've been doing this.
It's so different than like the academic world. I mean,
to say the least.
Do you love it?
Yes, I do.
And he's very good at it. He's very good at it all over, not only the U.S., but all over the world.
Well, not all over the world, but several different. Liverpool at the Cavern Club, where the Beatles made their name. That's the one I'm most proud of. Mm-hmm. We're going to be doing Copenhagen this year for a couple of days. We've done Stockholm. We've done. You've probably been to all of these places, I would imagine. No,
I have, but not to your stuff. I'm going to try to put it on my schedule and join one. So,
oh my God, I would love that.
The cities. Do you know where the fans will receive you, or do you just pick where you like and what the? I mean,
well, in general, we pick where we know that there's a healthy pop music scene.
Sure.
And as long as there is one, we know that there is going to be a built-in fan base. Liverpool is different because the Cavern Club is, as they dub themselves, the most famous club in the world.
Mhm.
So we don't have to worry about draw there. I mean, people just go there because of the Beatles connection.
Sure.
And then when we're doing our thing, they'll see placards outside the Cavern with these lists of bands and where they're from, and it has a certain air of exoticism about it. So they're there anyway. They figure they might as well come down and check it out, and they often stay. I've met.
Is that how you guys? I mean, I read about. Is that how you guys met?
Didn't we meet through the Oddities internet list?
Well, I used to write for Oddities magazine, and David's.
I wrote for it too. We met that way, and one year he showed up at the festival in Liverpool, which unexpectedly, and since then we just became better friends over the years.
That's nice.
Yeah, no, it's after I aged out of being a Chippendale dancer. David, give me a laugh there. I mean,
I think it's legit. I would have believed you.
I went to school for radio, television, performance, all that kind of stuff, and I'm now 33 years into being a financial analyst. And so go figure with that. I own Pop Detective Records, which a number of my artists have played in a lot of David's festivals all over the place. And outside of that, I do this, and I do PA announcing for high school sports, and I stay busy with all kinds of things. So. But
cool.
yeah, music has brought David and I together for a lot of years. And, when the pandemic hit, we decided to do this material issues thing. And we thought, well, we'd do a couple shows. We'll just talk about some music. And it just kind of blossomed into this entire thing where we're getting wonderful guests like Amy Taylor. And we're talking about your very interesting life. And it's just been a blast. It's been a blast.
Financial analysis is a bit mathematical, right?
Yeah.
And so can music be, right?
Yeah. Oh, sure.
Can be.
Zeros.
I prefer to look at music viscerally. I don't know how to read music. I'm not a musician. I don't want to be. I want it to hit me the way any emotional experience would. I don't want to know what notes are playing. I don't want to know the technical elements. I mean, I have enough people who could teach me them every day of the year. I've refused because I want to always be a
can ruin things, right?
Yeah, and for me anyway.
Yeah.
I'm also very fortunate, Amy, to have a wife that has helped me out through all of this. She's an aerospace engineer, so she's very bright. And she said one of the reasons she fell for me was, unlike most of her boyfriends, I wasn't intimidated by the fact that she had a PhD in physics that she was an aerospace engineer. I was like, when I found that, I was like, oh, great. Because I knew I would have somebody with whom I could relate. Yeah. And despite the fact that she works crazy hours, she's helped me. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, she's up at like 3 a.m. She gets on her computer, does work at home to make sure that everything is all settled. Then she goes into the office, and she's in charge of a group of engineers. And she gets home at like 7, and she still likes cooking dinner, and I can't cook for my life, so I'm happy to avail myself of it. And
wonderful.
But she still has time to help me put these festivals together. Without her, there'd be no way. Not in a million years.
How did you meet her?
At one of my shows. We had a mutual friend. We didn't realize that he was a mutual friend, but he invited her when she moved out to LA. He invited her out to the show. I met her there. We didn't have much time to talk because I was really busy, but then the festival lasted a little over a week. Near the tail end, he was playing in another band, invited her to that, and we met outside the club, and then we did have a chance to talk. And we went out a few days later, and we've been together ever since. We celebrate our date anniversary more than we do our wedding anniversary.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's when we knew we were going to be together.
Really? You knew?
Yeah. We knew, yeah.
Oh, I'm so jealous. It's hard when you've done what I've done, but I have faith that I just got to find somebody who wants to put up with this 24/7 because I'm a lot. But I do know a lot of retired women who have found love. And so I think it's going to have to be a guy who can handle stigma, maybe a retired or self-employed guy. it's going to be hard for his family.
Me. No, excuse me.
God help you. You could do better.
Oh, would you stop?
There was
Well,
something. There was something in my chest. Excuse me. I'm sorry.
You obviously need somebody bright. You probably need somebody who's very liberal.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I would get along with somebody judgmental and conservative.
Right. Well, they may end up being judgmental about certain other things, but not you.
I mean, nobody's perfect. So if my family could get through me getting outed, I have faith somebody else could. But when you date,
no doubt.
It's hard though. When you date at this age, people have kids, and what are the kids going to think? Hey, yeah, dad married a retired whore. That's going to be super.
Mark. I mean, just as an example, your kids would probably have no problem with her. Right?
No. I've raised both my daughters to be very, very free thinking and accepting of everybody. And yeah, I got
all my retired girlfriends. Like that whole thing, you can't turn a hoe into a housewife. It's bullshit. They're all fine. First of all, it solves itself because after a while, nobody calls. So even if you wanted to do it, you can't. Secondly, you have enough money, so you wouldn't want to because why take all that risk? You're not broke.
Mm-hmm.
Thirdly, they've seen everything. They love being loyal because that's the thing they haven't been able to do. So it's totally wrong that when people say that you can't be a different person in different chapters in your life. So I hope the next chapter is, I look forward to it being different and fun. And
well, I think everybody needs to, I try to myself, is to live in the now, because as they say, if you're living in the past, that's when you have basically a depression. You're feeling rotten about a lot of things because you're thinking of the past. If you're full of anxiety, you're thinking about tomorrow, you're thinking about next week, you're living in the future. But if you're at peace, you're living in the now.
And I can't think of anybody more at peace than Mark, actually.
But it doesn't.
I'm a bundle of nerves. He's like.
I know, it's a lovely energy. I need to channel this.
It's great. It's wonderful. I do want to say we had a question coming in from John Kirby, good friend of ours. He wants to know, and we talked about this briefly, what you think of OnlyFans.
I mean, I have one. I don't really use it, so I'm not making a ton of money. I'm not in a high percentage of creators as they rank it. I know it flourished in COVID. A lot of sex workers, because of COVID, they didn't want to go hang out in person. And some of them have never returned to the in-person stuff. They travel anywhere you get an Airbnb or hotel, you can shoot content. It's all a tax write-off now. So they're shooting content in Thailand and Iceland and it's all for their OnlyFans. And there's less physical risk. There's no legal risk. It's fantastic for some people. I think it's a lot of famous people. Some sex workers get mad that they're hijacking it because they have these huge fan bases. So when they join OnlyFans, they get all the attention because they're already famous, and that pisses off some sex workers.
Right.
That's capitalism. I don't think you can really do much about that. You have to be interesting and provocative. It probably helps to be very physically beautiful because it's a visual medium. So maybe the younger and the conventionally hotter probably do better, I assume. I'm not sure. But I think anything that I wish they would give the creators an even higher payout, but I understand they have bills to pay. I hope they're being fair. A lot of people prey on sex workers and take too high of a margin. It sucks. But I think people are going to sell content. And so it seems like they're running an above board business and not abusing anybody. So I think so far so good, maybe.
Right. Yeah. I know John was probably interested because he started a page. He got it completely confused. He said OnlyFans. So he was doing this and covering up just his body, and nobody subscribed. And that's why he's probably wondering. John knows we love him. We're just kidding you, John.
Hi, John. No, I think any way people are surviving and they're trying to hurt people as little as possible, I'm here for it. We're all going to be dead in a few decades. Can't we just let each other live? In
100 years, nobody's going to know anything about any of us, most likely, unless you happen to be the president.
Unless, of course, there's a chip that can be inserted that contains all information about everything.
There are people who are passed away and their digital life is still up.
Yeah.
That's an interesting virtual version of yourselves. But I agree with you. I think I have to think that kindness wins, and even kindness in complex situations like what do you do about sex work? How do you make it safer, but also minimize pain for people who want more monogamy and fidelity than I think I have to think that kindness is going to win. And it seems that the arc of history bends toward kindness. I mean, I
It
think
absolutely does.
we are less violent than we were 1,000 years ago. I think that has to continue, right? I hope.
And I think what is
Well, you know what, Amy? I think this is why I think cancel culture is bad. I'm very liberal, but I don't like it because the adage that once you forget about history, you're doomed to repeat it. I totally subscribe to that. We need those things as a reminder of what not to do.
Yes.
So I don't like, and people know this. While I applaud the intention of the woke movement, I don't think they're going about it exactly right. I know what they want. They're doing it wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I lean left. The Berkeley, Northern California is still strong in me. But I know internet pylon mobs have never made anything better. No. Being addicted to your righteous indignation and trying to cancel people has never made any effective change. I think it's disgusting.
Yeah,
I think it's just as cruel. It's the Nietzsche's abyss thing. You're looking into the abyss and it's staring back and you're being just as evil. And it doesn't accomplish anything. So I hope it's short-lived. I think there's already a lot of clapback against it.
It will be short-lived, at least relative to other movements. Yeah,
I hope so. I mean, free speech is so important. Voltaire? I'm going to get this wrong, but he said, "I hate what you say, but I die for your right to say it."
Yeah, it was Voltaire, and that's more or less the essence of it. Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, you have to let people speak, even if it's offensive to you. You must. I mean, we have nothing if we silence speech, right?
Which is why having discussions like we're having tonight,
absolutely,
on this subject is just very freeing in many ways. And I hope everybody that watches this, either live right now or in the archives of materialissues.com and on Facebook, gets a lot out of it and understands more about you, Amy, and what you've been doing, what you do, and can be. As John Kirby just mentioned, she's beautiful, honest, and intelligent, and he's enjoying this lady. So, and
there will be a man out there who will want to enjoy you for the rest of your life. I mean, look, I don't know you that well, so there may be certain foibles, peccadillos that you have.
Yeah, that perfect.
Yeah. Oh well, yeah. Me too.
Like
but honestly, and I know you say the word "hoe" to make a point, and sometimes it's tongue in cheek. But I wish you wouldn't use that word, only because the more that word is used, it's misunderstood. What you do is not anything like what people in brothels do, or
they're human beings too.
I mean, what you offer is way more than sex, and as you mentioned, sometimes it's not even about sex. No. That's why you're so successful at it, because you are smart, and because you are a good listener, and you have a lot to offer to the conversation. So
I think I just monetized my loneliness. I just monetized my loneliness.
However it works, you're an extraordinary person, and that's why you're so successful at what you do. I mean, your looks certainly help. I won't deny that, but what's inside is way more. As you said, there are a lot of beautiful women out there. They're not nearly as successful as you are because they don't have the other things to offer, and that's the most important thing.
Just gotta try to be nice, and I think thanks for giving me a chance to speak, because I know people would like to shut people like me up, and I get told that every single day on the internet is like, go to hell and shut up. And I think the closet is where they can harm people that are different, any kind of difference. And I refuse, because that's where they can make up lies. They can fill the vacuum with lies, and then they can say whatever they want. And since I got outed and I can speak, I'm going to, because when you see that people like me are humans, and there are millions of us, somebody is a sex worker. You just don't know it, folks. And then they can't, kill us. I mean,
right.
A dead hooker is not a funny joke. It's a human being.
No.
So thanks for letting me be human.
It's been our pleasure. Thank you
It's
for
an absolute pleasure. Yes, indeed. And best wishes to you. And thank you again for being on Material Issues. This has just been
both coasts, so we have to keep in touch for when we're in the same city.
Oh yeah, well, you come back this way. I'm in New York all the time, and drop me a line, say hi. It would be nice just to hang.
Yep, absolutely.
Just hang. And John came in. The thing you can be with a beautiful woman and not be able to have a conversation. Met a lot of them. Thank you. It's all good.
As we all have. Yeah.
Really? Then maybe that's easier if they shut up. I don't know.
No, not for me, and not for a lot of men.
No.
For some, yeah, of course. I think my dad was probably like that. In his 70s and 80s, he was dating women in his 20s. I mean, he's an amazingly charming man. Even at 91, he still got some of that charm. But
did he work? What was his life?
He was mostly in real estate for most of his life. So he made money. He was a big risk taker. So he made money, lost money, he was on a roller coaster. But even when he didn't have money, he always could project the image that he did.
Some men have that swagger, man.
He does. And that's why he was still, after my mom passed, he was able to continue he was able to date younger women and have them like him.
Go Dad. I love him.
But he was the kind who he was one of those guys who I think he liked it when a woman spoke, but he didn't really care what she said. As long as she presented youth, he wanted to feel youthful. So, she could say what 20-year-old women say who may or may not be all that bright, and it was fine for him.
To each their own.
Everybody's different, which is why there are men who like that, and there are men who like people more like you. So,
to each their own.
For sure.
Well, I'll be going back to. I was telling her earlier, David, whenever you were opening the gate for the pool guy.
I was not.
I'm just saying. I was been singing "Amy" by Pure Prairie League all day today in anticipation of the show. I don't know why, but what a wonderful song I keep in my head for the next few days.
Amy, have you seen the show Californication?
Yes.
There was a character in the 7th season, not a regular character, but in a couple of episodes, named Amy Taylor Walsh.
Yes.
And I wondered if there was some connection there.
I picked this name because my first kiss, I hope he doesn't watch this, he probably doesn't, was a boy that was one of the young loves of my life whose name was Alex Taylor. And I always liked his name. He got married, he lives somewhere else now, but I always just liked his name. And then you got to pick a name. I mean, you got to pick something. You can't go out there with your fucking social security number on the web for strangers. So I figured A was alphabetical. That was good. If it was listed, it'd be first. And then it was a name you couldn't really easily misspell.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
So I don't know. I maybe looking back would have picked something more kind of Italian, Hungarian, like I am. Because Amy Taylor kind of seems waspy to me.
It is.
It's done now, so I could have picked
something like Gina Lola Brigida.
Yeah, something like that would have been better.
It avoids confusion. It avoids having people mispronounce the name.
Shortened, or is that your full last name?
No, it's great that you brought that up. I am a 7th generation progeny of a Israeli sage named the Baal Shem Tov, which is a good name. And so Bash is a derivation of Baal Shem Tov. I am a dual citizen, although I was born in New York.
Do you ever want to return?
Well, I know I don't want to live there full time, but having our honeymoon there was a wonderful thing.
I was just there a couple months ago.
You were in Tel Aviv?
Jerusalem.
Oh, Jerusalem. Well, we had our honeymoon in Tel Aviv, but we went all around. And my wife lived in Israel as a young child for a while, so we went back to her hometown, and we went back to my dad and grandfather's hometown. There was actually a woman still in my grandfather's building who remembered my grandparents. She heard me because I was doing a Facebook video, She heard me. She heard my name, and she said, "Was your grandparents mayor in Ahuva Bash?" Yes. Oh, they were such nice people. It's like,
Oh,
oh my God, I couldn't believe that.
and you didn't know she'd be there? She was just
No,
around.
no, of course not.
Oh,
No.
lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, my first name is Mark. I kept it.
You did?
No, the thing about Bash, Amy,
What?
Amy, when I was a kid, everyone ridiculed me because of my last name.
I
And
like it. It's awesome.
no, well, now as an adult, everybody thinks it's so cool. They figure I made it up. And,
Yeah, it's really short, which is good, right? David Bash. It's like super, but
I'm happy with it.
It's great for music, right? It's
Perfect rock and roll name. Yes, indeed.
Yeah, totally.
I thought maybe it was a moniker. So, would you choose David if you could choose any name?
Absolutely. I love the name David. And by the way, I can't stand when women call me Dave. I don't like it. If I was making love to a woman and she said, "Oh, Dave," it would be over. And I don't mean in a good way. I mean, like, get out of here.
Oh, not over for you. Okay.
I feel like that's a strong reaction. And like, is Dave? What do you hate? Why?
I don't hate it. Dave is a guy's name. David is a man's name.
Oh.
Which is really ironic because I'm in so many ways I'm a child, so I don't. Maybe I should be Dave, but no. I mean, well, I guess I need David for the homeostatic balance. So,
David, did you know that my original birth name was David? And I'm not.
I did not know that.
I'm adopted, by the way, and
You are.
I found out my original birth name was David. So you and I have something in common there. We're both actually Davids.
There you go.
Did you find your birth people or?
Yeah, it's a long and crazy story, but it turns out because Pennsylvania opened up their adoption records 4 or 5 years ago, which they were never opened before. So I got my original birth certificate, found somebody online that was the granddaughter of who I now realized was my birth mom. And long story short, I went that way through Facebook. I didn't want to just like surprise my birth mom or any half siblings and freak them out. But turns out my birth mom had died and had been looking for me for 25 years because I was her 7th child and the only one she gave up for adoption. And the birth father on my birth certificate was not my actual father. It was just, I was a one-night stand and she was embarrassed. So she put down her husband, who was they were divorced at that point. She put his name on my birth certificate.
Amy, it was like 1960, so of course she was embarrassed.
Yeah, she was embarrassed.
Yeah.
So so I did find a number of half siblings. I have no full siblings, obviously, but it's an interesting story. It's a very long and crazy story, but I was adopted into a wonderful family. My father was a psychology professor. So David and I have a lot of things in common, probably why we get along so well.
Absolutely.
I mean, how lovely to have been chosen. Like,
yes.
My parents just fucked and got stuck with me.
Yeah.
So, nobody chose me. They just got stuck with whatever.
You're so self-effacing. I mean, there's
times that they could have made like a return and trade in or something. They might have.
I don't know your childhood. Maybe he would have a field day with you. I don't know, but on the surface, you have absolutely nothing to be self-effacing about.
Just kind of.
It's wonderful.
Survive.
No, it's been blessed.
I mean, I think shame is. Somebody said we need to bring back shame, and I so utterly disagree with that because I understand societal shame. I know what it's used for. You don't want people just running around killing people and having sex with children, and there are things that are not okay. I get it.
Yes, of course.
But what I see is that a lot of people are ashamed about things that they needn't be, and then
Absolutely.
It causes so much harm. And the men who hurt women in my business the most, it's usually a self-hate thing, right?
Right. Yeah.
They didn't want to have to pay, and then they hate her, and then they kill her, or whatever. I think shame is overarching. Like, life hands you both, what little I know, have fascinating lives, and life hands you what it hands you, and for whatever, being ashamed of what the parts that aren't great, I don't know, it's not useful, right? It's
not useful at all. It's awful.
Not at all. And
it's so narcissistic too, because it purports that you're like the only person who's been through shit, which is nonsense.
Exactly. And as I said earlier, you got to let everything that's behind you, let it behind you. That's why I don't even, that's why I have that right there. It says, let it be.
Oh, that's lovely. It's not the Beatles. It's
Well, I love the Beatles, but I got it because my mantra has always been, let it be. Everything that's happened even 2 minutes ago doesn't matter for where I am right now and where I'm going to be, down the road. So I've been through a lot, and as David knows, with the divorce and a couple of kids, and your world gets turned upside down. But if you harp on that and you stay living back there and you don't let it be, then it's just going to screw up your very short time that you have on this crazy merry-go-round called life. So just
sometimes divorce is for the best, as difficult it is to get through. You know why it's so expensive? Because it's worth it.
Because it's worth it.
Well, I'm hoping I never have to go. I can't imagine having to divorce my wife.
It sounds like you guys will make it. My parents are doing their 50th this summer, and
congratulations!
I got married. I never even tried it, so at least Mark, you tried.
Yeah, and and I'm great. I'm grateful for every experience I've had, and I do have 2 wonderful daughters, and I wouldn't be where I am right now at this moment if everything hadn't taken place exactly as it took place. And I'm here, and I'm grateful.
My wife has to constantly remind me of the same thing because I have things in my past that I really would like to divest myself of, and it's very hard.
Yeah.
Part of you are. I like you, so I wouldn't take it. I don't know what it is, but it made you who you are. That's not a bad thing.
No, that's absolutely true, and I'm self-improving every day. So
all we can do.
Yeah.
So a friend of mine says he's a better father now that he's divorced because there's not the stress of marriage that's not great. So I don't know.
For sure.
They're better as exes.
No, I mean when people stay together just for the kids, that's not the way to go. Absolutely not. And the kids know it.
Yeah, people can feel when things aren't healthy.
Right.
My dad says the secret to their happy marriage is a big house so they can avoid each other.
Well, that's a good point, Amy, because when I met the woman who became my wife, we found that we lived 3 blocks from each other.
Oh,
so for that reason, we didn't actually live together until after we got married. Everything was so convenient being 3 blocks away, and it allowed me and her to have our space when we needed it and to be together very conveniently when we wanted. So I had a little trepidation about, we had separate apartments. Now we live in a house. I had some trepidation, but we set up the house to where if we need to be by ourselves, it's very convenient.
Yeah.
And it all works out great. It's been wonderful from day one, living together with her. So
one of the most things about getting old. Oh, sorry.
I'm just saying, Rena's great. His wife is fantastic. I love her.
Lucky and love.
Thank you.
That's a blessing. Yeah. I think as you get older, in my mid 40s now, you realize like so much of it is just bullshit. And like that wonderful thing, nobody tells you that in your 20s, that when you start realizing about your mortality, that you're not going to be here forever. Mm-hmm. As the Buddhists say, the problem is you think you have time, right? And when it sounds morbid to think about, but when you really contemplate that you don't have time.
Well, yeah.
The wonderful byproduct of that is you realize like it's a bunch of bullshit. Don't judge that person. Don't hate that person. Forgive that person. If you're fighting over a bunch of bullshit, stop it. Because
absolutely. I can't think. I mean, I can think of so many examples where people didn't do that, and then one of them died, and they have to carry that guilt with them for the rest of their life, and it's not worth it.
No. Yeah. And you know what? And when you live in the now, as I've gotten older and realized that I want to remember more of the things that are around me right now. When I was in my 20s, 30s, even into my 40s, I didn't stop to smell the roses, so to speak, and say, I want to remember this moment for what it is, because I was too busy thinking about everything going on and what do I got next week and what do I got next month and everything's a jumble.
Yeah.
And then you get to a certain age where all of that stuff is not going on.
Yeah.
Your kids have grown up, everything, and all of a sudden it's like, boy, now I'm just walking my dog and enjoying the weather, and I just said hi to a wonderful neighbor, and I'm just enjoying this moment, and I'm grateful for it. And I find myself doing that much more often now. And things like this, doing the show with David and you. This is a great moment.
Thanks for doing.
Although I can't live in the now the way Mark does, I agree. This was a great moment.
Yeah, great moment.
I appreciate you guys. I owe you a drink.
Nice,
on one of the coasts or wherever, maybe in the middle.
We'll take you up on that. We'll tell you. Let's go to a show. I need to go to a show in New York City. Let's go to a show.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
That sounds like fun. Well, Amy, thanks again. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your evening out there. We appreciate you being a guest here on Material Issues. Best of luck with everything.
Absolutely. May you always get what you want. And when you don't get what you want, may you learn from it so that you in the future get what you want.
Nice.
Lovely. Thank you.
Have a wonderful evening. Good night, Amy.
Good night, Amy.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Well, there you go, David. Episode number 95 with an absolutely wonderful guest, Amy Taylor.
Yeah, she's awesome. And I hope, we didn't delve into what she did in its nuts and bolts as much as we could have. But I hope that people who are listening or watching and who will watch will understand that what she does is so much less about sex than it is about companionship, about connection. And anybody who would label thank you, Andy. Anyone who would label her as a whore or anything else is, obviously they have their own hangups, but clearly they don't want to learn.
Well, I think they're just missing the point.
Yeah, and there's a million reasons why they're missing the point.
They're missing the point for many reasons.
Some people refuse to see the point. Some people aren't bright enough to see the point. Some are too hung up on stuff and they never can. But you got to try. You got to
look at a lot of our friends that have been, coming up here and dropping some messages and things, and they've all been enjoying the show and making great comments. A great guest, a wonderful show.
Yeah, I've never seen so many hearts up there.
Yeah, so, we got a lot of people loving the show. It's really nice.
That's good.
That's why we do these shows. I mean, honestly, we've done a lot of musicians. We've had some authors. We've had some Cy Young Award winner baseball players on it. We've had baseball players on the show. We've had a lot of little different things, but this was a great change of pace tonight. I loved it. Great idea, David.
Oh, well, I'm glad it all worked out. But yeah, then our next guest, which is in a few weeks, is back to the music realm. So why don't you tell us who she is?
Yeah, April 12th, which will be our 99th show. And we're still discussing what we're going to do for the big 100th show. We're thinking a retrospective of the first 99 shows and just kind of talking about a number of our guests. But on April 12th, if you were an 80s music fan and maybe you went to the dance clubs in the early 80s, you would have been familiar with this artist. Her band was called Romeo Void. They had a big dance hit called Never Say Never. I Might Like You Better If We Slept Together. Absolutely a great dance hit. And then in 84, they had a top 20 hit with A Girl in Trouble Is a Temporary Thing. Deborah Ayal will be our guest April 12th, and she hasn't done an interview in quite a long time. So this is going to be an interesting one. She's got a lot to say too about being a woman and the image that was expected of her in the music business in the 80s that was very tough to overcome.
Oh, no doubt about it.
It's going to be an interesting conversation with Deborah Ayal from Romeo Void, April 12th. And in between, we're going to have some Stump the Bash episodes, hopefully. And
at least one. I would assume next week will be just you and me, to quote Chicago.
Yeah.
And but I have been working on trying to get a member of the cast from one of the most iconic comedies of all time.
Yep.
I've already spoken with one cast member who probably is not going to do it, but that cast member still stays in touch with other cast members. And hopefully I will have a referral and this person will be interested in being on. So we'll see. But if that happens, it'll likely happen in one of the weeks in between now and Deborah Lyle's appearance. So hopefully that does come to fruition. But
Wonderful.
we will let you know, of course.
We always got a lot of irons in the fire, as we always say. So stay tuned to materialissues.com. Join the group here on Facebook, Material Issues. You'll always hear about what's coming up. We don't spam. We don't send out a lot of crazy texts and emails. We just let you know what's happening. Thank you, Tim. Another super guest, gentlemen. We appreciate
it. Tim. We appreciate that.
So
we knew there was going to be a little bit of controversy, but I think those who decided to watch are open-minded enough, or are just non-judgmental, or are just very much in favor of what Amy does, as I think people should be. That's my opinion. I know it's yours as well. I understand opposing point of views, but most of them are bathed in misconception. So
it's great. All right. Well, we'll see everybody. We'll see everybody next Wednesday. It will most likely be David and I doing our normal together shtick, maybe a stump the bags. We will see, but we'll update you. And then, of course, April 12th will be Deborah Ayel, Romeo Void, and then April, what is that, the 19th? That will be show number 100 of Material Issues, and we'll do something interesting for our 100th show. So thanks again, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday evening. This is Mark Hershberger, Pop Detective Records, saying good night. Mr. David Bash of the International.
Good night, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate it. I could say appreciate you, but that's too hip and modern. I say what we say when we were growing up. We appreciate it and you. So there you go.